bought this house new 20 years ago and have been rocking the same sink ever since. It's done its job, but it's time for a change. The upgrade I'm going with is the Lefton adjustable Waterfall Faucet kitchen sink with digital temperature display and LED lighting, model number KS2207. Now time for an unboxing. The sink came packaged very well with the control bar and faucet shipped in its own box and surrounded in styrofoam. All pieces arrived without any signs of damage. In another delivery came the sink bowl and all the accessories, which included a cutting board, a drain basket, a metal tray with drain, and a bag with the main drain and plumbing kit. The main sink bowl came wrapped in a nice protective bag, and once I removed it, the sink was in flawless condition. I'll quickly touch on the measurements as this will be your first priority when picking out a new sink. This particular one matched my sink's measurements almost exactly. The front to back rim to rim depth on mine was 22 inches, which matched the Lefton sink. The left to right rim to rim width on mine was 32 5/8, and the Lefton sink was exactly 33 inches. But I noticed it had a good sized lip and should work. The first big step in our project is removing the old sink. To start, let's clean our work area by removing all the stuff off the countertops. That looks better, now let's clean up a bit. Now we'll address underneath the sink by moving everything to a tote, then cleaning up here too. Much better. Next, we'll unwire the garbage disposal and uninstall it. Before starting, we'll switch off the breaker to the garbage disposal, which in my case is on the same plug as the dishwasher. While we're thinking about it, let's go ahead and turn off the water. I shut off the valves under the sink and also closed the main water supply to the house. After that, open the lowest faucet I could find to drain the remaining water from the lines. Now, let's disconnect the garbage disposal. Remove the cover and carefully pull out the wires. Even though we already shut off the breaker, I still verify it by checking with both the multimeter and the non-contact voltage tester. With that done, let's get the plumbing out of the way, starting with the dishwasher drain. The waste arm, P-trap, drain adapter, and tail pieces are all held together with slip joint nuts and washers. They easily unscrew by hand. And yeah, it's a bit gross. Be sure to have you something to catch the water in and hold all your plumbing, as it can be a bit of a mess. With the plumbing out of the way, we can go ahead and twist the garbage disposal off the sink flange. With everything disconnected underneath, now comes the fun part of removing the sink. There is silicone or plumber's putty that we'll have to cut, as well as 5 or 6 mounting brackets to deal with. Some of the brackets could be loosened by hand, while others needed a wrench to get started. I found it helpful to remove them completely because they can twist back into place when you're trying to lift the sink out. The front brackets were tough to reach since there wasn't much room, so I wasn't able to record that part. Now it's time to deal with this old sealant, whether it's silicone, plumber's putty, or whatever they used. This stuff has hardened like concrete. I started with a utility knife, but had much better luck using my 8-in-1 painter's tool. Once I freed up one section, I could push with this tool and break the rest loose. Couldn't really gain access to the back from the top, so I went underneath to try to squirt a few times. And finally, the old sink is out. The next important step is scraping away all the leftover sealant. Started with the 8-in-1 tool, but it was getting a little too close to scratching the countertop. After using it to remove the stubborn spots, I switched to a plastic putty knife. That worked perfectly, and I was able to clean off every last bit without leaving any scratches. A clean surface is crucial for installing a drop-in sink. With the old sink removed, we can finally test fit the new one. I was hoping the cutout wasn't too big, otherwise the sink wouldn't work and I'd have to buy a different one. And I also didn't want it to be too small because that would mean cutting into the countertop. Thankfully, it ended up being perfect. As long as I centered it, there was enough lip to rest evenly on all sides. Now we can pull the sink back out and install the faucet assembly before setting it in permanently. Now it's time to assemble the all-in-one faucet. Like I mentioned before, it comes well packaged. Let's remove it and set up a workstation to give us a place to work. Here, I suggest taking a few pictures of how everything is assembled from the box. All the washers and nuts are on the unit, but have to be removed so you can slide the pieces onto the sink, then secure it with those same washers and nuts. Here, I'll show the process of removing the nuts and washers just in case you need to go back and confirm which washers go with which piece. One tip I have here is to lay everything out in the order you take it off. That includes left to right, but also laying the washers on top of their nuts so you don't get confused later. I was told by my contact at Lefton that the motor comes pre-assembled in its correct orientation. However, as I was reinstalling it in this same orientation, I realized from other videos that mine arrived flipped compared to theirs. The instructions also have it flipped depending on which manual you're reviewing. So I had to email pictures to Lefton to get them to confirm. I didn't get a response until after I had the sink installed, and I can confirm if you install the motor incorrectly, it will cause your lights to flicker and be very dim. Mine didn't even work when using some of the features. Once I installed it correctly, everything worked perfectly and the lights were super bright. All the nuts and washers are now removed, so let's get it mounted and installed. Now it's time to reinstall the nuts. This part is pretty straightforward, but I want to walk through the whole process because I did get hung up on one thing. There's a white paper-like washer on one of the pieces, and I wasn't sure if it went underneath or between the sink and the accessory unit. The manual didn't show it, but I found the answer in other videos, so hopefully showing it here helps you out as well. Here's me installing the motor in the same orientation it came in and the same orientation shown in the manual. I'd later have to go back and flip this. And here's that paper washer I was talking about earlier. It makes perfect sense that this is the way it goes, but if you've never done this before, you're looking for confirmation and it's not really located in the manual. Now that all the nuts and washers are installed along with the motor, it's time to hook up the water lines. This part looks quick and easy in the video, but I did have to wrestle with it for a bit to get everything lined up in the hole and the threads to catch. Another thing that tripped me up was figuring out which side the hot and cold lines connect to. It actually does matter. I checked the manual and here's what it shows. If you're looking at the faucet from the back, the hot line goes on the right side and the cold goes on the left. Next, we'll install the overflow head and gasket. Now time to get the faucet in there. Nothing fancy here, you're just pressing into place. And when you pull this head down, it does not snap back, and that is because we have to install the weight. This installation process is pretty easy, but if I had to do it over again, I'd move that weight down about one weight length. That'd give the perfect amount of slack when using the head. I tried to change this out from under the sink and gave up after almost stripping the screws. Alright, now with everything assembled, let's do a quick test fit. Mainly what I'm doing is once I get silicone around this, I want to make sure I can get this in there without making too much of a mess. After all that work, we're finally ready to install the sink. For drop-in installation, the sink doesn't have any clips to hold it to the counter like the old sink. Instead, it relies solely on silicone. I did some research on the best kind to get and came up with GE's Kitchen & Bath Advanced Silicone 2 in clear. The 2 is a stronger version that has a faster ready time, so make sure you get that. I did notice both options, and they were both in similar looking tubes. Now it's time to lay down the silicone. I'm running a steady bead all the way around the edge of the opening, making sure there are no gaps or thin spots. The sealant keeps the water from getting underneath the sink, but it also acts as an adhesive that holds the sink firmly in place. So take your time and apply a consistent, even line before setting the sink in place. I didn't guide the sink in perfectly, so I ended up with a big glob of silicone on the water lines and all along the bottom front edge of where it scraped off. I wiped everything clean from underneath and added more silicone to the spots that got disturbed. Between reapplying, smoothing it out, and cleaning up all the stray silicone, it turned into a bit of a mess. I probably went through half a roll of paper towels. But in the end, it looked great. Placed about 50 pounds of weights in the sink to hold it in place while the silicone cured, and then I let it sit for a full day before moving on to the next steps. As you just saw in that clip from the back side, the sink didn't make it all the way back to my silicone bead. To fix, I used my finger to push the silicone up under the lip. It's probably not the ideal method for maximum holding strength, but it will definitely prevent water from getting through. Where at the bottom, the sink scraped off the silicone here on the front edge, I needed to reapply more. The cleanup was getting so messy that I switched to painter's tape to mask off the area, and it ended up working out better than expected. After letting the silicone cure for 24 hours, I came back to check to see how secure it was, and it was locked in pretty tight. I'll admit, I was skeptical that silicone alone would hold it, but now, a few weeks later as I'm recording this voiceover, it's rock solid. The sink came with a well-designed bottle trap drain system that worked with a switch on the accessory panel, but once I got to this point, it was clear it wasn't going to work with my existing drain stub out without some serious modifications, so I ended up abandoning the kit and reinstalling my old garbage disposal instead. First, I have to remove it from my old sink, easy enough. The goal is to make sure the disposal allows the plumbing to hook up right, then later I'll buy a new one and toss this nasty thing. But we will clean it up a bit before installing. To seal the sink flange, I'm using plumber's putty. I know this can be controversial because a lot of people say 100% silicone is the way to go. In my situation, I chose plumber's putty because I'm replacing the disposal with a new one soon, and since putty doesn't bond like silicone, it should make future removal easier. I'll make a new video when I install the updated disposal, so be sure to subscribe to see whether I stick with putty or switch to the silicone. Now, under the sink, the first piece that goes on is the gasket. This is a cardboard-like washer that cushions the flange. Below that comes the backup flange. This is a rigid piece of metal that supports the gasket and helps keep everything tight. After the backup flange, I place on the mounting ring. This is a large ring with 3 tightening screws built in. With those pieces in place, I then can install the snap ring. The ring snaps into grooves on the bottom of the sink flange and locks the entire mounting system together. Once the snap ring is in, you can tighten the mounting screws, turning each one a little at a time. As they tighten, the mounting ring pulls upward evenly, compressing the gasket and securing the sink flange firmly to the sink. With all that tightening, the excess putty is exposed and it's easy to tear away. Some people use a utility knife to get a nice clean cut, but I just use my fingers and pull it away. Now it's time to attach the garbage disposal. Make sure you hold the mounting assembly with one hand so it doesn't rotate while you twist the disposal onto the mounting ring. I had to make a few adjustments to get everything lined up. Once that was set, I took some measurements so I could cut my plumbing to the correct lengths. I was able to reuse all my plumbing from my old dual basin sink for this single basin setup, but it was a tight fit. I don't have any plumbing specific tools, but I was able to make these cuts using my oscillating tool. I found it safer to hold the pipe with a pair of pliers while cutting. There seemed to be an obstacle at every turn with this project. When I started attaching the water lines, I realized the lines that came with the sink were larger than the connections on my shutoff valves. I spent about 30 minutes at Lowe's looking for adapters, only to discover later, while putting tools away, that a small bag of adapters had actually come with the sink that was hidden by a few tools. I've never been so relieved. Because of the way the adapters are designed, I could only get a wrench on them from 2 angles. That meant I had to remove the shutoff valve handle to get enough clearance to tighten them properly. I did this on both sides to make sure the adapters were secured nice and tight. Now it's finally time to turn on the water, open the valves, test to see if the sink works, and check for leaks. And it's a miracle. Everything is working perfect and we've got no leaks. And this is also about the time that I found the motor was flipped, so I went ahead and switched that around. Next, I needed to attach the dishwasher drain and of course another obstacle. The drain hose was the exact size as the inlet on the disposal so it wouldn't slide on. That meant another trip to Lowe's for the parts to make it work. I ended up picking up a barbed splicer and a universal dishwasher branch connector. And oh yeah, I had to remove the knockout first. With the drain hose connected, I can now hook up the electrical to the garbage disposal. One thing I don't show here is the breaker is still off, and I also used a meter to double check for electricity. Better safe than sorry. With the wires tucked away and the cover on, let's flip the breaker and see if the disposal works. Alright, it works. And now for the final task, filling the soap dispenser reservoir with some Dawn dish soap and getting it installed. You can use either a dish soap or a hand soap here, it really depends on what you use the most. In my case, I'm usually washing or pre-washing dishes at the kitchen sink, so dish soap makes sense for me. If you or your family wash your hands more at the kitchen sink, I'd recommend using a gentler hand soap instead. To install the feed tube or the dip tube, just remove the pump and install it like this. And now that I'm looking at the design, this is probably the easiest way to refill the reservoir in the future. Simply remove the pump and pour your soap into this opening. And with that last task complete, let's take a look at our finished product. I've been using it for a couple weeks now, and it's light years better than my old setup. I'm really enjoying the deep single basin design more than I expected, and the material is incredibly durable. I've accidentally dropped knives, heavy accessories, and scraped dishes across the bottom, and there's still no signs of wear or damage. And this is my first time using a faucet with a pull-down spray head, and I'm not sure I could ever go back to a sink without it. Looking at the integrated accessory deck from right to left, we have a slot here for the drinking water faucet. I'm keeping that uninstalled and under my sink until I get a reverse osmosis water purifying system. Be sure to subscribe to see that in a future video. This next knob was for the sink plunger, but it won't be used. Then there's the water control knob that allows you to turn the water on. Per these instructions, you're supposed to turn this off after each use. With it on, you can use the piano keys to activate the different water accessories. I use this option often along with the drain pan to rinse off produce. This is something I've not done consistently until getting this sink. Game changer. And here you can see that the motor, which is activated by the water flow instead of a power source, is telling us the temperature as well as activating these LED lights. The next piano key option is for the main faucet. The main faucet has 3 different flow options. The next piano key is for the glass rinser. You turn this on, then you press a glass down on the glass rinser and it works as magic. I don't use this often, but it is a neat option to have. Then this final key is for the Waterfall Faucet. Waterfall faucets are good for rinsing fruits and vegetables and washing large items. And now for the accessories. This one I use often, the drain basket. It makes washing fruits and vegetables a breeze. This sink is designed so that the accessories sit in the perfect position while you work. The next useful accessory is the metal tray, which can act as a separate basin if you're used to a 2-basin sink design. I use it to hold dirty dishes until I'm ready to rinse and load to the dishwasher. And the last accessory, one I haven't used yet but I am looking forward to, is the wood cutting board. I ordered some food grade mineral oil to condition and protect it before the first use. Since I use a cutting board several times a week, this one will definitely get plenty of use. The advantage of having a cutting board over the sink is that you can scrape the food scraps straight into the basin and send them right into the garbage disposal. I hope this detailed video helps you with your sink install, and if it does, please be sure to hit the like button and leave a comment and let us know how it went.